The summons arrived on a dreary Tuesday, not by crisp, official letterhead, but by a discreet, unadorned envelope delivered by a silent, impeccably dressed courier. For Elena Hartley, an heiress from a lineage once whispered about in gilded halls but now crumbling into genteel poverty, it felt less like an invitation and more like a chilling decree. Dread, cold and tenacious, began to coil in her stomach long before she opened the sealed missive. Her father, Richard Hartley, a man who had once commanded rooms with a boisterous laugh but was now a mere shadow of his former self, hollow-eyed, perpetually distracted, offered only cryptic, evasive explanations of Keen, unforeseen complications, and unnecessary arrangement. His words were flimsy veils over an abyss she instinctively knew was vast and terrifying. The address on the summons led her not to the familiar, comforting chaos of London, but to the shimmering, improbable cityscape of Dubai. She was driven through avenues lined with fantastical skyscrapers, each a testament to unimaginable wealth and ambition. Finally, her sleek, black car pulled up before Al-Sayeed Holdings, a colossal edifice of glass and steel that pierced the sky like a spear forged from ambition and power. It wasn't just a building, it was a monument to unyielding control, a fortress of finance that seemed to absorb all sound, all light, all dissent. Inside, the opulence was a suffocating embrace of marble, gold, and hushed reverence. Elena, despite her apprehension, carried herself with a brittle, inherited grace, a legacy of centuries of Hartleys who had known how to hold their heads high even as their fortunes crumbled around them. She was ushered into a vast, minimalist office where the only truly dominant feature was the man seated behind a polished obsidian desk, Khalid Al-Sayeed. He was precisely as the whispers had portrayed him, formidable, a presence. Khalid Al-Sayeed, the undisputed desert king in global oil circles, radiated an aura of unyielding, absolute control. His dark eyes, like polished obsidian themselves, bore into her with an intensity that pricked her skin, scrutinizing, dissecting, giving nothing away. He was a man carved from the desert itself, stark, beautiful, and utterly merciless. "Miss Hartley." His voice was deep, resonant, a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very floor. It was devoid of warmth, of welcome, of anything but precise, deliberate purpose. "Thank you for coming." Elena, maintaining a desperate defiance that felt like a fragile shield, spoke, her voice steadier than she felt. "My father was rather vague, Mr. Al-Sayeed. Could you enlighten me as to this arrangement?" She clasped her hands tightly in front of her, digging her nails into her palms, a small, private anchor against the tidal wave of anxiety. A faint, almost imperceptible shift in Khalid's expression, a dangerous glint in those dark eyes. "Your father, Mr. Richard Hartley," he began, his tone a carefully measured pronouncement, "owes me a considerable sum. He foolishly invested in a series of ill-advised ventures, secured by assets he no longer truly possessed, and, unfortunately for you, Miss Hartley, his most valuable remaining asset, explicitly used as collateral, is Hartley House. Along with controlling shares in Hartley Industrizer family's ancestral legacy, I believe." A cold, horrifying dread seeped into Elena's bones. Hartley House. More than just a home, it was a living chronicle of her family, a repository of generations of memories, joys, and sorrows. It was the very foundation of her identity. To lose it, it was unthinkable. Khalid, observing her reaction with unnerving precision, continued, his voice relentless. "I own Hartley House now, Miss Hartley, and Hartley Industries. Your family, I believe, is quite destitute. Despite appearances, I propose a solution to salvage your family's name, protect your father from the very real threat of ruin, and provide for your future." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, each syllable a heavy stone dropped into the quiet room. Elena felt a rising sense of panic, her mind racing, searching for an escape, a loophole, anything. Then he delivered the crushing blow. "You will marry me, Miss Hartley, within the month, a binding marriage contract, with terms that guarantee your father's debts are absolved, and a substantial sum is placed in a trust for your family. In return, you become my wife in name and in public. You will live here in Dubai, as Mrs. Al-Sayeed. Your family's reputation will be restored, their solvency secured. Their future, in essence, is in your hands." The words struck her like a physical blow, sharper than any fist. Her carefully constructed composure fractured. "You can't be she gapsh. Her voice raw with disbelief and outrage. "This is blackmail. I am not some chattel to be traded for debts." Her fingers trembled, her nails digging deeper into her palms. Khalid's expression remained utterly unperturbed, a granite mask of indifference. "Call it what you will, Miss Hartley," he stated, his voice flat, emotionless. "Your father's irresponsible actions have left you with few viable options. This is the only one that preserves your family's dignity and solvency. Refuse, and your family faces not only financial ruin and public humiliation, but also potential legal repercussions for your father's questionable dealings. Accept, and you live a life of comfort and privilege, free from want or worry. Choose wisely. My patience is not limitless." He rose slowly from his desk, a towering, imposing figure, and walked to the vast, floor-to-ceiling window that offered a dizzying panorama of Dubai. His back was to her, yet his presence filled the room, radiating an almost physical pressure. "Consider your options, Miss Hartley. I will expect your answer by tomorrow morning." Elena stood rooted to the spot, utterly trapped. She was forced to choose between her own pride, her cherished independence, and the survival of her family. She was utterly, irrevocably, at his mercy. The gilded cage had just presented its terms. The night that followed was a torment. Elena paced her lavish, yet suffocating, suite, a gilded prison from which there seemed no escape. Every fiber of her being screamed in protest against the injustice, the indignity of it all. She resented his unspoken accusation, the casual assumption that she was just a spoiled socialite, a frivolous creature easily bought. He didn't know her. He couldn't know that she had earned her degree with honors, that she volunteered tirelessly at a women's shelter, that she had quietly shouldered responsibility for her family's dwindling affairs long before her father's recklessness spiraled out of control. Yet, to him, she was a pawn, a mere sacrifice on the altar of his business interests. The thought of her father's impending ruin, of the public disgrace that would follow, gnawed at her. But it was the image of Clara, her younger sister, still in university, vibrant and hopeful, her future dependent on their family's stability, that truly twisted the knife. Elena was the elder, the one who always took responsibility, who always fixed things. She was the only one who could save them from this precipice. The weight of their fate rested squarely on her shoulders. As the first tendrils of dawn painted the sky a faint bruised purple over the distant desert, Elena made her decision. It was a bitter pill, a crushing blow to her cherished independence, but it was born of desperate necessity and a fierce, unyielding loyalty to her family. She would marry Khalid Al-Sayeed, but she would do so with her dignity intact, her spirit unbroken. He might own her financially, he might dictate her public life, but her heart, her will, her very essence would remain her own. She would show the Desert King that she was far more than he imagined. The marriage ceremony was stark, unadorned, a chilling antithesis to the fairy tale dreams every young girl nourishes. It took place not in a grand cathedral or a lush garden, but in a private, opulent room within Khalid's sprawling palace a fortress of polished marble, gleaming gold, and oppressive silence. There were no joyful guests, no heartfelt vows exchanged under a shower of confetti, no celebration of love. Only a stern-faced legal official, Khalid's retinue of impeccably dressed legal counsel, and her father, Richard, a man utterly diminished, pale and drawn, who avoided her gaze as if his very glance might ignite the brass. Shame that burned between them. Elena chose a simple cream silk gown, its elegant lines a stark contrast to the extravagance of her surroundings. Her hair was pulled back tightly, unadorned, and her face was devoid of makeup, a deliberate choice to strip away any illusion of festivity, to present herself as she truly was, a woman making a sacrifice. She moved with a stiff, almost regal grace, each step a testament to her profound sorrow and iron-willed composure. Khalid, in traditional crisp white dishdasha and gutra, was an imposing figure, his face a mask of impenetrable indifference. As the formal marriage contract was recited, the ancient, binding words echoed in the high-ceilinged room, each one settling in Elena's soul with a cold, heavy dread. When the quill was offered, her hand trembled almost imperceptibly as she signed her name. In that moment, Elena Hartley ceased to exist, and Mrs. Khalid Al-Sayeed was born. "Welcome, Mrs. Al-Sayeed," Khalid said, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth or congratulation. It was a pronouncement, not a greeting. "This is your new home. My staff will see to your every need." Elena met his gaze directly, her chin lifting slightly. "I understand my duties, Mr. Al-Sayeed. I am here to fulfill the terms of our agreement." Her voice was steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. A faint, almost imperceptible arch of his eyebrow was his only reaction to her defiance. He nodded curtly. "Indeed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have urgent matters that require my attention." Without another word, without a glance back, he turned and walked away, his imposing figure disappearing through a discreet side door, leaving her alone in the vast, echoing room, a bride abandoned the moment the vows were uttered. A kind, older woman, Amina, the palace's head housekeeper, with gentle, knowing eyes that held a lifetime of observation, approached her. Her voice was soft, laced with a quiet compassion that Elena desperately clung to. "His Highness expects you to dine with him this evening, Mrs. Al-Sayeed," Amina said, her voice barely a whisper. "May I show you to your chambers?" Elena merely nodded, resolved to maintain her composure, to present an impenetrable facade to this gilded prison. She would be polite, respectful, and entirely detached. She would play the role of Mrs. Al-Sayeed, but she would never truly be his. The grand dining hall was a cavernous space, draped in rich, heavy fabrics that absorbed all sound, making it feel even larger and emptier. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen constellations, casting a dazzling but cold light. A long, dark, polished table, adorned with gleaming silver and exquisite porcelain, stretched across the room, vast and imposing. The oppressive silence amplified every subtle sound: the soft rustle of silk, the faint clink of cutlery, the hushed footsteps of the unseen staff. Khalid was already seated at the head of the table, a rigid, unreadable figure in stark white. He offered no greeting as Elena entered, merely a curt nod towards the chair directly opposite him, at the far end of the immense table. Elena took her seat, her back ramrod straight, her chin held high, determined not to betray the tremor in her hands. The distance between them felt like an unbridgeable chasm. The meal was served by silent, efficient staff, moving like shadows. Exquisite dishes, each a culinary masterpiece, were presented. Delicate Arabian mezes, succulent grilled meats, fragrant rice dishes. But Elena merely picked at her plate, the food tasting like ash in her mouth. Khalid, by contrast, ate with quiet efficiency, his movements precise and controlled, betraying nothing. To break the suffocating silence, Elena finally spoke, her voice cutting through the stillness. "Your palace is quite impressive, Mr. Al-Sayeed," she began, attempting a neutral tone. "It must have taken years to construct." Khalid slowly met her gaze, his dark eyes unwavering. "It was built by my ancestors, Mrs. Al-Sayeed," he replied, his voice devoid of pride, simply stating a fact. "Each generation adding to its legacy. It is a symbol of our family's enduring strength and continuity." "Indeed," Elena said, a hint of bitterness she couldn't quite suppress lacing her voice. "A stark contrast to Hartley House, I imagine. A crumbling relic, perhaps, by your exacting standards." His dark eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, a subtle shift that Elena, ever observant, caught. "Hartley House held a certain charm, Miss Hartley, a different kind of strength, perhaps, though less practical for modern endeavors." "Practicality seems to be your guiding principle, Mr. Al-Sayeed," Elena retorted, her sardonic tone sharpening. "Business, power, acquisitions. Even marriage, it seems, is merely another practical transaction for you." A muscle in his jaw twitched, a minuscule tremor that betrayed a flicker of emotion beneath his impenetrable exterior. He placed his fork down with a soft, deliberate clink, his gaze fixed on hers, suddenly intense. "My decisions are always practical, Mrs. Al-Sayeed," he stated, his voice like honed steel. "They ensure stability, growth, and the protection of my interests. Your father's regrettable lack of practicality led to this very situation." "My father's flaws are his own," Elena shot back, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "Not mine. I am not responsible for his mistakes, yet I am forced to bear the consequences." "But you bear the consequences, do you not?" Khalid countered, his voice unwavering, devoid of sympathy. "Life, particularly in our world, is built on consequences, on cause and effect. Your father caused this. You are the effect." Elena felt a fresh surge of impotent anger, but forced herself to maintain composure. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. "And what, precisely, are my consequences as your wife? Beyond public appearances and polite silence?" she challenged, her voice a low, steady current of defiance. Khalid leaned forward slightly, his posture still rigid. "A life of comfort, security, and prestige, Mrs. Al-Sayeed. You will represent my household at social functions. You will ensure the smooth running of this palace, which will be your domain. You will conduct yourself with dignity and discretion. Your privacy will be respected, within reason. We maintain separate quarters, but you are expected to host official engagements and maintain the household's reputation." His words painted a chilling picture of her gilded prison, a life meticulously defined, devoid of personal choice or passion. "Understood," Eleanor replied firmly, her voice clipped. "I am capable of performing those duties." A faint, almost imperceptible shift in his expression, something akin to surprise, or perhaps a flicker of grudging respect. He merely nodded curtly, picking up his fork and returning to his meal, signaling the end of their terse exchange. The remainder of the dinner passed in silence, a heavy, oppressive blanket. Elena, watching him covertly, saw a man of immense control, rarely allowing a glimpse beneath the surface. He was a closed book, a fortress. She wondered, despite herself, what truly lay beneath that formidable exterior. He clearly saw her as a means to an end, a valuable acquisition. But she would adapt, she would observe, and she would, somehow, carve out her own space, her own freedom within these gilded walls. The battle, she realized, had only just begun. Life in the Al-Sayeed palace settled into a meticulous, almost sterile rhythm. Khalid, a man of rigid routine and relentless dedication to his vast empire, was immersed in his work from dawn till late into the night. Their shared meals remained formal, stilted affairs, a silent dance of two strangers bound by a contract. They moved through their opulent home like phantoms, rarely intersecting outside of these obligatory moments. But Eleanor refused to be passive. Her spirit, though wounded, was not broken. She began to explore the palace, a labyrinth of grand halls, hidden courtyards, and unexpected retreats. She found solace in the exquisite fragrant gardens, a miniature oasis carved from the desert, and, to her delight, discovered a magnificent multi-story library. Its shelves groaned under the weight of ancient texts, modern literature, and scholarly tomes from every corner of the globe. Her artistic sensibilities, long nurtured in the quiet solitude of Hartley House, found an unexpected outlet here. She spent hours sketching the intricate patterns of the palace architecture, capturing the play of light on the marble, or losing herself in the stories within the books. It was during these quiet explorations that her relationship with Amina, the palace's head housekeeper, began to deepen. Amina, a woman of warmth and quiet wisdom, initially formal and deferential, slowly softened under Elena's genuine curiosity and kindness. Elena began learning Arabic from Amina, a quiet rebellion against her confinement. And through their lessons, Amina inadvertently revealed fragments of Khalid's elusive personality, his deep respect for his late mother, his quiet, almost anonymous acts of generosity towards his staff, and the less fortunate, his fierce, unyielding loyalty to those he considered his own. Elena began to see glimpses of a far more complex man than the ruthless desert king portrayed in the media and in their initial encounters. Khalid, too, observed Elena, though she rarely caught him doing so directly. He had expected a fragile, perhaps petulant, socialite, prone to dramatics or constant demands. Instead, he found a woman of quiet grace, remarkable composure, and surprising intellect. He noted her poised elegance when receiving dignitaries, her ability to navigate complex social interactions with charming ease. He noticed her quiet hours in the library, her concentration as she sketched. He subtly began leaving books he thought she might enjoy on the library table, watching from a distance as she devoured them, a faint, almost imperceptible curiosity stirring within him. He saw the passion in her art, the way her gaze lingered on a particularly intricate carving, the subtle joy that lit her eyes when she discovered a rare manuscript. He had acquired a wife, but he was discovering a person. Then came the storm. One evening, a fierce, sudden sandstorm swept through Dubai, a swirling, ochre-colored tempest that blotted out the sun and plunged the vast palace into a disorienting gloom. The external generators struggled against the onslaught, sputtering intermittently. Elena felt a jolt of primal anxiety as the lights flickered and died. She moved through the vast, suddenly eerie corridors, searching for Amina, when a violent tremor shook the very foundations of the palace. Dust rained down from the ornate ceilings, and with a sickening groan, a jagged fissure snaked its way across the intricately painted wall near her. Suddenly, Khalid emerged from the gloom, a formidable silhouette against the emergency lighting that sporadically flickered back to life. "Elena!" he called out, his voice sharp with a rare raw concern. "Are you all right? The generators are failing. The main structure is under immense strain." He moved towards her swiftly, his eyes scanning the new damage, the previous veneer of cold indifference momentarily stripped away. Another, more violent tremor ripped through the palace, accompanied by a deep guttural roar from the very heart of the building, followed by the sickening sound of crumbling masonry. The lights flickered frantically, briefly illuminating a newly formed jagged crack that snaked across the polished marble floor. "Structural integrity compromised," Khalid stated, his voice tight, utterly professional, but with an underlying urgency. "This way, we need to get to the lower, more stable levels. Now." Without hesitation, he reached for her arm, his grip firm and unyielding, pulling her along. Elena, surprisingly, felt an instinctive surge of trust, overriding her usual defiance. She followed, her breath catching in her throat, adrenaline coursing through her veins. He led her down a series of concealed staircases, deeper into the palace's foundations, to a fortified bunker, starkly functional space, but undeniably secure. "We will be safe here," Khalid stated, his voice regaining some of its usual composure, though Elena could still detect the tension in his jaw. He switched on a warm, steady light, revealing cots, emergency supplies, and communication equipment. Elena, catching her breath, looked at him. The Desert King, the ruthless businessman, had vanished, replaced by a man of swift, decisive action and unexpected, visceral protectiveness. "Thank you," she said softly, the words feeling inadequate for the sudden, profound sense of relief and safety she felt in his presence. "You saved me from a crumbling wall." Khalid's dark eyes met hers across the small, confined space. A faint, almost imperceptible easing of the rigid lines around his mouth occurred, a softening that Elena had never witnessed before. It was a shared moment of raw vulnerability, of survival. In the heart of the storm, amidst the shaking and the darkness, a fragile, unexpected connection was forged between them. The sandstorm raged outside, a furious symphony of wind and pelting sand, but within the confines of the bunker, an eerie quiet reigned. The silence between Elena and Khalid was no longer cold or empty. It was charged, filled with the unspoken awareness of their shared peril and the strange intimacy it had created. Khalid moved with quiet efficiency, checking communication lines, monitoring sensors, his mind clearly on the safety of his vast household. Elena watched him, no longer seeing the monolithic Desert King, but simply a powerful, decisive man, stripped bare of his usual trappings. When, hours later, the storm finally subsided, leaving an unnatural stillness in its wake, Khalid received the all-clear report. The damage to the palace was superficial, primarily cosmetic. He turned to Elena, his expression now more composed, and offered her a hand to help her from the cot. His touch, though brief, sent a shiver through her, a lingering echo of the night's intensity. Back in the palace, Elena saw everything with new eyes. The sense of EOD wood and exotic spices, the intricate carvings that adorned every surface, the silent efficiency of the staff, all these details now seemed to speak of Khalid, of his personal world. It was his dominion, an extension of his formidable will. But she had seen a different side of him, a glimpse of something beneath the carefully constructed facade. In the days that followed, a subtle but undeniable shift occurred in their interactions. Khalid, who had once maintained a formidable distance, occasionally initiated conversation during their meals, asking about her day, about the books she was reading, about her thoughts on current events. Elena, in turn, found herself sharing observations about the palace, insights gleaned from Amina, or her own perspectives on global affairs. Their conversations were still guarded, still formal, but they were no longer stilted or merely transactional. A fragile bridge of intellectual curiosity and genuine engagement was slowly being built between them, spanning the chasm of their forced union. Elena discovered that Khalid's mind was as sharp, as incisive, and as wide-ranging as her own. He spoke not only of global markets and geopolitical strategies, but also of ancient trade routes, the delicate ecosystems of the desert, and complex philosophical concepts. She saw the immense weight of his responsibilities, the burdens of leadership that he carried with such stoic grace. He was a man of vast knowledge, relentless drive, and an almost solitary existence. Khalid, for his part, found himself increasingly intrigued by Elena's quiet strength, her resilience, and her refusal to be defined by her circumstances. He had expected a fragile flower, easily wilting under pressure, but he had discovered steel beneath the silk. He saw her empathy for the staff, her sharp insights during a diplomatic dinner, her unexpected wit that occasionally caught him off guard. A quiet fire burned within her, a depth of character he had never anticipated in the woman he had so coldly acquired. The initial transaction was subtly, undeniably, transforming into an undeniable, powerful connection that transcended the bounds of their contract. One afternoon, Khalid surprised her profoundly. He led her to a secluded wing of the palace, a section she had not yet discovered in her explorations. He opened a heavy, ornate door to reveal a vast, sun-drenched studio. Easels stood ready, canvases of various sizes leaned against the walls, and tables were laden with every imaginable artistic supply: tubes of vibrant oils, delicate watercolors, charcoal pencils, brushes, palettes. "A space for your art, Elena," he said, his voice softer, more hesitant than she had ever heard it. "I have observed your passion, your talent. It seemed a fitting use for this room." Elena stared, speechless, her eyes blurring with unshed tears. It wasn't just a room. It was a profound acknowledgement of her deepest self, a recognition of her passion and her individuality. It was a gift that went beyond material wealth, a gesture of understanding and acceptance that chipped away at the last vestiges of her resentment. "God," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. This means more than you know." He nodded, a faint, genuine smile, rare and breathtaking sight gracing his lips. "Your happiness, Elena," he said, his gaze holding hers, "has become of considerable importance to me." The words resonated deep within her heart, echoing with a truth that both thrilled and terrified her. The last walls of her defenses crumbled. She was falling in love with her captor, the man who had imprisoned her, yet now offered her a space to fly. But beneath the burgeoning affection, a silent, corrosive force still simmered, unspoken secrets. Her father, Richard, lived comfortably in London, provided for by Khalid's terms, but Elena still had no clear understanding of the full extent of his reckless dealings, or what precisely he had done to incur Khalid's formidable wrath. The truth remained veiled, a dark cloud obscuring the fragile light of their evolving relationship. One evening, unable to bear the weight of the unknown any longer, Elena decided to confront it. After a strained dinner, she followed Khalid into his study, a place usually off-limits. "Khalid," she began, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "My father, his dealings. What exactly did he do to anger you so deeply? I need to understand. I need to know the truth." Khalid's expression hardened instantly, the familiar mask of indifference sliding back into place. "That is a matter of the past, Elena," he stated, his voice flat, dismissive. "A closed chapter. It does not concern you now." "But it does concern me," Elena insisted, a desperate urgency creeping into her voice. "It is the very foundation of our marriage. How can we build anything resembling a true partnership, a life together, if there are such fundamental secrets, such profound omissions between us?" Khalid rose from his chair, his posture rigid, becoming the imposing desert king once more. "Some truths are best left buried, Elena. They are messy. They are painful. They will not change our current arrangement, nor will they change your father's fate." His voice was low, dangerous, a clear warning. "But it changes me," Elena countered, trembling but holding her ground. "I am not a fool, Khalid. My father was reckless, yes, but I don't believe he was malicious. What could he possibly have done that was so terrible that you resorted to such extreme measures? To blackmail? To a forced marriage?" Khalid's dark eyes narrowed, a flash of something akin to betrayal crossing his features, as if her questioning was an affront. "You presume much, Elena. Do not forget the circumstances that brought you here. Do not forget who holds the ultimate power in this arrangement." His voice was a cold whisper, a chilling reminder of her precarious position. The subtle threat stunned deeply, cutting through the affection that had begun to blossom. "I am simply asking for honesty, Khalid," Elena said, her voice quiet but filled with disappointment. "If we are to have any true future, any genuine bond, it cannot be built on such fundamental omissions, on such a profound deception." Khalid shook his head, his face a mask of stone, his resolve unyielding. "The matter is closed, Elena. Do not pursue it further. There are matters far more significant at stake than your curiosity." He turned abruptly and walked away, leaving Elena alone in the vast, silent study, once again facing his impenetrable secrets. Her heart ached, a deep, bruising pain. The love that had begun to blossom, so tentatively, so wonderfully, now felt precarious, built on a foundation of shifting sands and unspoken truths. Could she truly trust a man who harbored such profound, manipulative secrets? The palace, which for a brief, glorious period had felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a gilded cage once more. The fragile peace was shattered. The confrontation cast a long, crash, suffocating shadow over the palace. The easy camaraderie that had tentatively begun to blossom between Elena and Khalid withered, replaced by a palpable tension that hung beneath every interaction. Eleanor retreated, more and more to her studio, seeking solace in her art. She painted turbulent seas under stormy skies, her brushstrokes expressing the turmoil within her soul. The weight of Khalid's secrets felt like a physical burden trapping her, suffocating the burgeoning love she so desperately wanted to embrace. She loved him, a terrifying and exhilarating realization, but how could she build a life, a future, with such fundamental omissions at its very core? Khalid, though outwardly composed, noticed her withdrawal. He missed their quiet discussions, the subtle shifts in her expression, the intelligent sparkle in her eyes. He saw her hurt, the accusation in her silence, and the way she now carried herself with an air of quiet sorrow. He knew he had alienated her, pushed her away, but he still clung to the belief that some truths were simply too dangerous, too messy to reveal. He told himself he was protecting her, shielding her from a reality far harsher than she could imagine. Yet, the emptiness in the vast palace seemed to echo the growing chasm between them. The underlying tension escalated dramatically during a grand diplomatic reception hosted at the palace, a glittering spectacle designed to showcase Al-Sayeed influence. Elena, ever the poised and elegant hostess, moved through the glittering crowd, exchanging polite pleasantries, a practiced smile fixed on her lips, her inner turmoil carefully hidden. She was halfway through a polite conversation with a visiting ambassador when a familiar, yet unwelcome face appeared at her elbow. Mr. Davies, her father's former financial advisor. He looked haggard, his usually slick hair disheveled, his eyes darting nervously around the opulent room as if pursued by unseen demons. He spotted Elena, his eyes lighting with a desperate, almost manic energy, and he practically lunged towards her, ignoring all social graces. "Elena! Oh, Elena!" he began, his voice hoarse, a desperate whisper. "Your father, he got himself into quite a mess, didn't he? That deal with Al-Sayeed. Desperate times. He didn't realize the extent of it." His words were disjointed, rambling, clearly fueled by alcohol and a terrified conscience. "The extent of what, Mr. Davies?" Elena pressed, her heart beginning to pound, an urgent, cold premonition seizing her. She subtly guided him away from the immediate earshot of others, her polite smile unwavering. Davies swayed, eyes unfocused. "The gold, Elena. The ancient gold. That's what Al-Sayeed was truly after. Your father, he promised it. A family secret, a hidden cache. Al-Sayeed didn't care about the shares or the house. He wanted the legend, the mythical gold. Said your family had guarded it for centuries. Sir Elias Hartley's treasure, he called it. The Crusader hoard. A sharp intake of breath behind her. Elena didn't need to turn to know who it was. Khalid. His voice, cold as ice, sliced through the low murmur of the reception, cutting straight to Davies. Mr. Davies, perhaps you would care to join me for a private discussion. In my study. Now. Davies paled, all the color draining from his face, turning him ghost white with pure terror. Khalid, moving with startling speed and unyielding resolve, gripped Davies' arm, his fingers like steel bands, and steered the trembling man away from the astonished crowd, disappearing through a discreet, well-concealed door. Elena stood rooted to the spot, reeling. The gold, the ancient gold. She had heard the whispers, of course. The fanciful tales of hidden Crusader artifacts, of ancient family treasures secreted away within Hartley House. She had always dismissed them as charming but baseless legends, products of her family's romantic imagination. But Khalid's sudden, chilling appearance, his ruthless control over Davies, and Davies terrified. Rambling confessionette all confirmed it. It wasn't about her father's failing business. It wasn't about the shares in Hartley Industries. He hadn't truly wanted the house itself. He had wanted the mythical treasure concealed within its very foundations. Her father had gambled with his family's most sacred secret, promising what he didn't fully control, and in his desperation had used his own daughter as collateral to obtain it, unknowingly exposing a secret guarded for centuries. The realization struck her with the force of a physical blow. Khalid had known all along. He had engineered their marriage, manipulated her, allowed her to fall for him, all while knowing that this profound deception, this calculated pursuit of ancient wealth, was at the very core of their union. He had played her. A cold, burning fury replaced the ache of hurt in her chest. She would not confront him immediately. No. She would find the definitive evidence, the undeniable proof, and then, only then, would she face him, on her terms. The very next morning, a chillingly calm Elena approached Khalid. Her demeanor was one of icy politeness, a carefully constructed facade that betrayed none of the volcanic anger seething beneath. Khalid, she began, her voice level, almost detached. I wish to visit Hartley House. There are personal effects I need to retrieve, family heirlooms, and certain documents that require my attention. She met his gaze directly, challenging him, a silent dare in her eyes. Khalid's expression was, as usual, unreadable, but a faint, almost imperceptible tension in his jaw betrayed his awareness, a flicker of suspicion in his dark eyes. He knew. As you wish, Elena, he replied, his voice equally cool. I will arrange your travel immediately. My security detail will accompany you, of course, for your safety. It was a subtle assertion of his control, a reminder that she was still under his purview, even in this request for what seemed like a personal errand. Elena merely inclined her head, a gesture of cold acceptance. She would play by his rules, for now. But her game had changed. The journey back to Hartley House, less than a week later, was surreal. The private jet, Khalid's security detail, the opulent travel, it all felt like a dream, a stark contrast to the crumbling reality she was returning to. Hartley House itself loomed on the horizon, majestic yet impossibly melancholic, draped in the gray English weather. It was no longer her home, merely a place she needed to plunder for answers. She moved through its familiar corridors with a chilling detachment, each step bringing her closer to the truth she both craved and dreaded. She went directly to her father's dusty study, a room that had once smelled of pipe tobacco and old books, but now carried the faint scent of neglect. She began to meticulously, systematically, pore over his disorganized ledgers, his haphazard collection of ancient maps, his scattered notes. Hours melted away as she sifted through the detritus of his increasingly chaotic life. And then she found it. Hidden behind a loose panel in the mahogany desk, concealed beneath a pile of seemingly innocuous receipts, lay a leather-bound journal. It was brittle with age, its pages filled with elegant faded script in her great-great-grandfather, Sir Elias Hartley's, hand. The journal was far more than a simple record. It was a chronicle, a meticulous account of the Hartley gold. A vast, astonishing collection of ancient artifacts, priceless coins, and glittering jewels, all secreted away within the very foundations of Hartley House, protected by a complex series of booby traps and ingenious concealments. The gold was real. It was still there. Elena's breath hitched as she read, a chill of understanding washing over her. But the journal also revealed a chilling, far more significant detail. A final, deeply hidden compartment within the main vault, accessible only by precise calculations based on complex astrological bod, alignments, and ancient numerical sequences. This compartment, Sir Elias had written, held not treasure, but an even more significant, deeply personal family legacy, a secret he considered too profound, too dangerous, to ever reveal lightly. Her father, it seemed, had only known about the existence and general location of the main vault, the gold. Elena felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. Her father, in his desperate attempt to stave off ruin, had gambled her away for a treasure he couldn't even fully access. He had given Khalid enough information to tantalize him, enough to incur his formidable wrath when he couldn't find the full extent of the treasure, leading directly to the forced marriage. With trembling hands, Elena meticulously copied the relevant passages, including the obscure, tantalizing clues about the second, deeper compartment. Armed with this explosive knowledge, a weapon forged from her ancestors' secrets, she returned to Dubai. Back in the glittering cage of the palace, the tension was a palpable, suffocating presence. Elena, armed with her newfound truth, felt an icy calm settle over her. She walked directly into Khalid's opulent study, her posture straight, her gaze unwavering. "I found what I was looking for, Khalid," she stated, her voice steady, devoid of emotion, each word a carefully aimed dart. "The Hartley gold. It is real. But I also found something else. The truth. The real reason for our marriage." Khalid's dark eyes narrowed instantly, his face impassive, but the slight tightening of his jaw, the rigid set of his shoulders, betrayed his heightened awareness. "And what truth have you uncovered, Elena?" His voice was low, cautious, like a predator sensing a shift in the wind. "You didn't marry me for my father's business failures," she retorted, each word imbued with a cold, righteous fury. "You married me for the gold. My father promised it, but when he couldn't deliver the full extent of it, you took the house, and then you took me, believing I was the key to unlocking the rest." Khalid's face remained a mask of stone, but his jaw clenched. "Your father was reckless. He made promises he could not keep. The gold was part of his desperate bargaining. When I couldn't find it, when he failed to deliver on his commitments, I ensured I would have the ultimate leverage. You." His voice was flat, devoid of remorse, a chilling confirmation of her worst fears. "You knew all along," Elena whispered, the bitter taste of betrayal in her mouth. "You knew the real reason. You let me believe. You let me fall for you, all while knowing this profound deception was at the core of our union. You played me for a fool." Khalid's eyes hardened, a flash of something unreadable, perhaps defensiveness, perhaps cold pride. "Do not presume to judge me, Elena. Your father was a cheat, a gambler. My actions were a consequence of his desperation and his deceit. I protect my interests, and the Hartley gold, Elena, is now mine." "No," Elena countered, her voice firm, resolute. "It is not yours. Not yet. My ancestors were far more clever than my father, or you. The gold is in Hartley House, but not all of it, and not in the main vault alone. There is another compartment, a final, hidden secret. I am the only one who truly knows how to find it. I have the clues. You may have the house, and me in name, but you do not have the gold, not without me. Khalid stared at her, his face a mask of profound surprise. Then slowly, a dawning realization spread across his features. His dark eyes, which had been so cold, now held a new, intense interest, even a flicker of grudging respect. She was not just a pawn in his grand scheme. She was a player, armed with knowledge he lacked. The tables had, for the first time, turned. The Desert King, for all his power and control, was not in complete command. Elena felt a surge of exhilarating power, a fierce satisfaction. The game, she knew, had just entered a deadly, exhilarating new phase. The silence in Khalid's study was thick, pregnant with the weight of revelation. Khalid's face slowly transformed, his initial surprise giving way to an intense, calculating focus. His dark eyes, usually impenetrable, now held a dangerous glint of something Eleanor recognized as intellectual fascination, perhaps even a grudging admiration. A hidden compartment, Khalid rumbled, his voice low, almost contemplative. Your ancestors were resourceful, and your father, even more foolish than I initially presumed, to have not uncovered its full extent. He paused, his gaze fixed on Elena, assessing her, probing for any hint of deceit. So, you possess the knowledge, the final piece of this puzzle. I do, Elena affirmed, her voice steady, radiating a newfound power she hadn't known she possessed. The journal detailed a complex series of astrological alignments, numerical sequences, specific architectural cues that act as triggers. It's a riddle, Khalid, not just a key. Khalid's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile, a predatory glint in his eyes. And what do you propose, Elena? A renegotiation of our terms, perhaps? You offer what I have sought for months, and in return, you demand what I have already acquired, my wife, my desert queen. His voice was low, laced with irony, yet something in its cadence hinted at a deeper emotion. You are fearless, Elena, and remarkably cunning. I misjudged you greatly. You only saw what you wanted to see, Khalid, Eleanor retorted, her voice firm, unwavering. A desperate heiress, easily manipulated, a convenient solution to your problem. I am not that woman, and I will not remain bound by deception, no matter how golden the cage. Khalid rose slowly from his desk, walking to the vast window, his back to her once more. The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. Elena waited, her heart pounding a furious rhythm against her ribs, but her resolve was unyielding. This was her moment. He turned, his imposing figure framed against the glittering Dubai skyline, his dark eyes locking with hers. Very well, Elena. I accept your terms. We will return to Hartley House. You will lead me to this final compartment. And if the gold is indeed there, if it is as valuable and as significant as you claim, then our marriage contract will be dissolved. Your family will remain secure, their debts absolved, the trust fund untouched, and you, Elena, will be free. Elena felt a profound wave of relief wash over her, followed almost immediately by a surge of disbelief. He had agreed. But then, a subtle caveat, a sliver of doubt, entered his voice. However, Khalid continued, his tone regaining its familiar authority, a subtle reminder of who still held the reins. Until the gold is found, until the terms of this new agreement are fulfilled, you remain my wife. You will cooperate fully. Any deception, Elena, any betrayal of this new understanding, and the consequences will be severe, for your father and for your family. I trust we are clear on this point. It was a chilling reminder of his immense power, a veiled threat that kept her firmly within his control, even as he promised her freedom. Elena met his gaze, her resolve hardening. "Understood, Khalid. I have no intention of deception. I only seek my freedom, nothing more. When do we leave?" "Tomorrow," he replied, his voice firm. "This new secret, this new understanding, remains between us, for both our sakes." Elena nodded, a cold, fierce determination settling in her heart. She had won a battle, a significant victory, but the war for her true freedom, for her very soul, was far from over. She would lead him to the gold, unlock her ancestors' final secrets, and then she would walk away. But as she held his gaze, a pang of something akin to regret, a deep, aching sorrow pierced her resolve. The dangerous love that had, against all odds, begun to bloom between them would have to be sacrificed. The journey back to Hartley House was not just a quest for treasure, but a final confrontation with her conflicted heart. The glittering opulence of the Hartley gold chamber, revealed behind the hidden compartment in the ancestral home, was a breathtaking sight. Mountains of ancient Anne, coins, intricately crafted jewelry, and priceless artifacts gleamed under the specially installed lights, a testament to centuries of accumulated wealth and hidden history. This moment, meant to be a triumph for Khalid and Elena's ultimate liberation, instead became a crucible, burning away illusions. Elena had meticulously followed her great-great-grandfather's clues, unlocking the final, most complex mechanisms of the secret vault. Khalid's team had entered, their expressions a mix of awe and unadulterated greed. But for Elena, the sight was hollow. The gold was found, the terms were met. Her declaration of freedom, once so fiercely desired, now hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Khalid, typically composed, struggled to maintain his stoicism. His dark eyes, reflecting the shimmering gold, held a raw vulnerability she hadn't seen since the sandstorm. The desert Khas, king, for all his power, looked like a man who had won a battle but lost something far more precious. He had promised her freedom, and now the moment of truth had arrived. "Freedom," he echoed, his voice low, bitter, tinged with a profound regret. "You have earned it, Elena. My word is my bond. Your family's security is assured. The trust fund is irrevocably established. You are free." His voice, though resolute, carried the clear undertone of pain, a stark acknowledgement of their impending separation. Elena felt a profound, unexpected sadness. Her victory felt hollow, tinged with a devastating sorrow. She had fought for this freedom, believed it to be her ultimate salvation. Yet, standing amidst this vast, glittering treasure, she realized the true cost. She had allowed herself to believe in Dasta, their connection, to fall for him, but the core foundation of their union, his calculated pursuit of this very gold, remained a bitter, corrosive pill. "I will arrange for your return to London," Khalid continued, his gaze pointedly avoiding hers, his voice reverting to a business-like efficiency, as if to create a shield against his own emotions. "Or wherever you wish. A generous settlement, beyond the original agreement, will be transferred to a separate account, a testament to your invaluable assistance." He was trying to buy her silence, her absence, with more money, reducing their complex relationship to a transactional exchange once more. "I don't want your money, Khalid," Elena stated, her voice steady despite the tremor that ran through her hands. "I want my life back. My life, free of your manipulation, free of secrets." He finally looked at her, his dark eyes filled with an unspoken pain, a desperate plea she couldn't quite decipher. "And what if the life you had before is no longer the one you truly desire, Elena?" he asked, his voice raw, laced with the vulnerability she now knew he possessed. What if something has changed within us? Within us? Elena's heart ached, torn between the undeniable love she felt and the lingering wound of his deception. She knew what he hinted at, the profound connection that had blossomed against all odds. But the initial betrayal, the cold, calculated nature of his original actions, the years he had withheld the truth, it all lingered, a dark shadow she couldn't easily dismiss. "Change must be built on trust, Khalid," she finally said, her voice strained, the pain evident. "On honesty. Our beginning was built on anything but. How can I truly trust a man who withheld such a fundamental truth, who allowed me to fall into this affection, while knowing his true motive was merely to unlock a vault?" Khalid flinched, as if her words were a physical blow. "I acted as I believed was necessary, Elena. Your father's actions were reckless, dishonorable. I sought to reclaim what was owed to me, to protect my interests. I was shielding you from the ugliness of his debts, from the ruin he faced." "Shielding me or manipulating me?" Elena countered, her pain morphing into a renewed sense of independent resolve. "You made me a prisoner, Khalid. You played me for a fool, using my love for my family against me. You played with my heart." He took a step towards her, his hand reaching out instinctively, then pulling back, clenching into a fist. "There was no lie in my growing regard for you, Elena," he insisted, his voice thick with emotion, raw with desperate truth. "No deception in the way you came to inspire me, to challenge me, to awaken me to something I never thought possible. The truth of the gold was a separate matter, a business transaction. This," he gestured between them, his voice heavy with significance, "this is something new, something profound, something I never anticipated." Elena looked at him, truly seeing him in that moment, stripped bare of his defenses. Her heart ached, utterly torn. She knew, deep in her soul, that he loved her, and she, despite herself, despite the betrayal, loved him too. But the foundation of their relationship was tainted, irrevocably stained by deceit. "I need time, Khalid," she finally said, her voice trembling. "Time to process, to heal, to decide if I can ever truly trust you after everything. The freedom you have granted me, I will use it. I will leave. For now." Khalid's face was etched with a profound, aching pain, but he merely nodded, his usual stoicism slowly returning, a mask to hide his raw emotion. He understood. He had set her free, and now he had to endure the consequences of his own calculated choices. The next few days blurred into a mournful haze. Elena packed only a few essential belongings, leaving behind the overwhelming opulence of the CB palace, the material wealth that felt meaningless now. She ensured her father's security, ensuring the trust fund was indeed established and impenetrable. Amina, the kind housekeeper, embraced her tearfully, her eyes conveying a silent understanding of Elena's sorrow. Khalid remained distant, his formidable presence a heavy sorrow that permeated the palace. He oversaw every detail of her departure, ensuring every comfort, every formality. Their final farewell was in the silent, echoing foyer, a heartbreakingly polite exchange that belied the maelstrom of emotions swirling between them. "Goodbye, Elena," he said, his voice husky, almost a whisper, his dark eyes pleading with a silent intensity. "May you find the happiness you seek." "Goodbye, Khalid," she replied, her voice strained, fragile. "Perhaps, one day, truth will find its way. And perhaps it will be enough." She stepped into the waiting car, forcing herself not to look back, even as her heart ached with a profound, desolate pain. The private jet soared into the sky, carrying her away from Dubai, from Khalid, from the gilded cage that had held both her captivity and her unforeseen awakening. She looked down at the glittering city, a testament to his power. a place where she had found both crushing betrayal and a dangerous, undeniable love. She had gained her freedom, the one thing she had so desperately sought. But at what cost? She was stronger, wiser, irrevocably changed by the experience. But could true freedom, truly, be found without the love she had discovered, however complicated and painful its origins? The question echoed in the vast emptiness of the cabin, the silence mirroring the void in her heart. Eleanor returned to London, the familiar gray skies a stark contrast to the relentless sunshine of Dubai. Hartley House, the ancestral home that had been the catalyst for her forced marriage, now stood empty, its vast rooms echoing with silence, its fate irrevocably tied to Khalid's terms. She didn't want to live there, not yet. She found a quiet apartment in a leafy London neighborhood, a small, unassuming space that felt like a sanctuary after the overwhelming grandeur of the palace. She resumed her academic pursuits, completing the final steps of her forgotten degree, and volunteered at a small, independent art gallery, finding solace in the quiet contemplation of beauty. Her father, Richard, seemed oblivious to the true nature of her sacrifice, content in his newfound financial security, perpetually distracted by his own minor preoccupations. Elena felt a lingering resentment towards him, a quiet, bitter understanding of his profound weakness and selfishness. Yet, she knew she had made the right choice for Clara. The world of Dubai, of Khalid Al-Sayeed, felt like a vivid, almost fantastical dream, a distant echo from another life. She saw his name occasionally in the international news, new oil deals, philanthropic endeavors, his empire expanding inexorably. She wondered, sometimes, if he ever thought of her, if the connection they had forged, however tainted, lingered in his formidable mind as it did in hers. Weeks bled into months. Elena found a fragile peace in her new, independent life, a quiet sense of self-possession she hadn't known before. But it was always tinged with melancholy, a persistent, unacknowledged yearning for something more, for him. Her freedom felt absolute, yet it was isolating, devoid of the intensity and unexpected passion she had experienced in Dubai. One dreary, drizzling London afternoon, as she sat sipping tea, lost in a book, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar international number. Her heart leaped, a sudden, irrational certainty seizing her. She hesitated for only a second before answering. "Elena." His voice, deep and resonant, it sent a shockwave directly to her core, bypassing all defenses, stirring the dormant embers of her longing. It was Khalid. Her breath hitched. "Khalid," she managed, her voice a little breathless, her carefully constructed composure threatening to crumble. "To what do I owe this unexpected call?" "I am in London," he stated, his voice urgent, a rare vulnerability softening its usual authority. "I need to see you, Elena. It is important. Not about the gold, not about our past agreement, not directly. Something else. Something I must explain. Something I have only just begun to understand myself." Elena's mind raced, a tumultuous storm of hope, fear, and self-preservation. What could possibly bring him here, to her city, after all this time? Was it a trick? Another manipulation? Or was it something else entirely? "Where are you, Khalid?" she asked, cautious, a desperate need for clarity overriding her apprehension. "At Hartley House," he replied, his voice solemn, almost reverent. "I am in the main library. The gold is secured, as per our agreement. But there is something else, something I discovered after you left, something you should know. It concerns your family. A secret, Elena. Far deeper than the gold itself. A secret your great-great-grandfather hid, only hinted at in that final, cryptic compartment of the journal you found. A secret that changes everything." Elena's breath hitched again, sharply this time. A secret deeper than the gold? The cryptic references in the old journal, the final, most inaccessible compartment. Khalid had found it. He had opened it. A tremor of profound anticipation, a terrifying sense of destiny, ran through her. "I'll be there," Elena said, the words decisive, automatic. The familiar, irresistible pull of the unknown, of the shared history, of an undeniable connection, was too strong to resist. She hung up, her hand shaking, adrenaline surging through her veins. The careful peace she had meticulously built around herself lay shattered. She was going back to Hartley House, back to the secrets, and back to Khalid. The story, she realized with a terrifying certainty, was far from over. It had merely entered its most profound, most unexpected, and potentially most dangerous chapter yet. The taxi ride from her quiet apartment to Hartley House felt interminable, each turn of the wheel stretching the suspense. The gray London skies, thick with the promise of rain, seemed to mirror the stormy landscape of Elena's emotions. Hartley House loomed into view, a silent sentinel wrapped in ivy, majestic yet melancholic. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a repository of secrets, a place where destinies intersected. She found Khalid in the main library, standing by the vast fireplace, which remained cold and unused. He was dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored suit, a stark contrast to the more traditional attire he wore in Dubai, but his presence was no less commanding. His face was grim, etched with a gravity she hadn't seen before, and in his hand he held a single, ancient, leather-bound volume, smaller and even more fragile than the journal she had discovered. "Elena," he greeted, his voice low, solemn, his dark eyes meeting hers with an intensity that pulled her into his orbit. There was no artifice, no pretense, just raw, earnest concern. "Thank you for coming. I knew you would." Elena nodded, unable to speak, her gaze fixed on the book in his hand. Khalid began, his voice steady but laced with the weight of profound discovery. "The journal you found, Elena, detailing the gold and its hiding places, was only the first layer. After we secured the gold which, as you predicted, was truly astonishing in its scale and antiquity, my team continued their structural analysis of the vault. There was another, smaller, more deeply hidden compartment within the vault itself, accessible by an even more intricate set of calculations and a complex lock mechanism. Your great-great-grandfather, Sir Elias Hartley, was a master of concealment. He had a secret Elena, even he, wanted to keep profoundly hidden." Elena's breath hitched, a sudden, cold premonition seizing her. "What is it, Khalid?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Khalid extended the ancient volume, his hand steady. "This, Elena, is the true Hartley legacy. Not the gold, which was merely a decoy, a distraction for those driven by avarice. This is the chronicle of the Guardians." Elena took the book, her fingers trembling as they brushed against its aged leather cover. The script within was identical to the first journal, Sir Elias's elegant, precise hand. But as she scanned the initial pages, her eyes widening, she realized this wasn't about treasure maps or hidden wealth. This was a confession, a testament, a terrifying prophecy. The chronicle detailed Sir Elias Hartley's true mission. He was not merely a wealthy nobleman, but a member of a secret, ancient order, dedicated to safeguarding powerful, pre-biblical texts and artifacts, knowledge so profound, so potentially dangerous, that it could alter the very fabric of human civilization if it fell into the wrong hands. The gold, she now understood, was merely a grand illusion, a sophisticated cover to distract the greedy and protect the true, far more volatile secrets. The Hartley family for generations had been guardians of ancient knowledge, protectors of humanity's most profound and perilous secrets. The chronicle then detailed a catastrophic schism within this ancient order, a rogue faction driven not by protection but by greed and a thirst for unimaginable power, sought to exploit these sacred texts, to weaponize their knowledge for control and domination. Sir Elias, in a desperate attempt to protect his family's portion of these texts, had hidden them within Hartley House, precisely to shield them from this malevolent faction. Then, Elena's eyes fell upon a devastating, heartbreaking passage, a confession that made her blood run cold. Sir Elias had, in his wisdom and trust, entrusted a portion of these vital texts, these blueprints of power, to a seemingly trusted family friend, a renowned scholar, for safekeeping. But that scholar was secretly a part of the very rogue faction the Order had sworn to fight. The texts, containing the most dangerous knowledge, had fallen into the wrong hands. And that scholar's family, centuries later, had taken a different, darker path, becoming a powerful, shadowy organization, subtly influencing global events from behind the scenes, accumulating vast wealth and power through illicit means, manipulating world leaders, inciting wars, and hoarding knowledge for their own selfish gain. The name of that scholar's family, chillingly, was Al-Sayeed. Elena's head snapped up, her eyes locking with Khalid's, a desperate, dawning horror twisting in her gut. Her mind reeled, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of this revelation. The Al-Sayeed family, Khalid's own ancestors, were the rogue faction, the dark keepers of forbidden knowledge, the very force her own lineage had sworn to protect the world from. Her father's desperate promise of the Hartley gold to Khalid, the forced marriage, the blackmailed was all a cosmic irony, a preordained collision of two ancient, opposing legacies, unknowingly bringing a Hartley and an Al-Sayeed together in a bond born of deception, but destined for a far grander purpose. Khalid's face was etched with shock, with a crushing realization, a burden heavier than any financial empire. "My family," he said, his voice a whisper, hoarse with disbelief. "My ancestors, not merely merchants, explorers, and power brokers. They were the rogue faction. This chronicle confirms it, everything. My family's private histories, glorifying their influence, their unique knowledge, their secret projects. I dismissed it, saw it as mere vanity, exaggeration. But now it makes chilling sense. The immense, inexplicable wealth, the subtle, unseen control they wielded. The truly secret projects I inherited and never quite understood. It wasn't just business. It was something far more insidious, a legacy of dark power." He ran a trembling hand through his hair, his formidable composure utterly crumbling under the weight of this ancestral revelation. "My family library, back in Dubai, holds corresponding texts. I began to investigate after you returned the initial journal, after you spoke of your great-great-grandfather's hidden secrets. And now, with your chronicle, the pieces align. My family inherited a legacy of immense power, but also profound moral ambiguity. My ancestors, they were the very people your ancestors swore to protect humanity from." Elena stared at him, a maelstrom of emotions swirling within her. Shock, anger at the pervasive deceit of both their families, and a sudden, heartbreaking understanding that transcended their personal pain. Their forced marriage, the blackmail, the gold eat had all been a ripple in a far grander, more ancient, and terrifying conflict. They were unwitting players, descendants of opposing forces, brought together by fate, by deceit, and by a hidden truth that had lain buried for centuries, waiting for this very moment. "The chronicle," Elena said, her voice strained, a new resolve hardening her features. "It also speaks of a way to counter their influence, to restore balance. A specific ritual, a binding of forces, a spiritual, intellectual, and perhaps even literal union of the bloodlines of both families. To seal away the most dangerous knowledge, to neutralize the dark power. A partnership, Khalid." Khalid looked at her, his dark eyes no longer reflecting greed or betrayal, but a profound sense of new purpose, a crushing, terrifying responsibility. A binding of forces, he repeated, his voice low, contemplative, filled with a nascent understanding. A partnership. It seems our ancestors, both the guardians and the corrupted, foresaw this moment, this unique union, perhaps even this marriage, forced as it was destined. He stepped towards her, his gaze unwavering, a silent plea in his eyes. "Elena," he said, his voice raw, stripped of all artifice, "I swear to you, on my honor, I had no knowledge of this deeper legacy, this ancient wrong. I only sought a family debt, a material possession. But now we have a shared purpose, a shared responsibility to correct the mistakes of our ancestors, to safeguard humanity from this ancient darkness my family unleashed." Elena looked at him, truly seeing him now, not as her captor, nor even just her conflicted love, but as a man burdened by a terrifying, shared truth. He was no longer just the desert king, he was her reluctant partner, her destined counterpart. The love she had fought so desperately to suppress, to deny, surged within her, complicated, yes, by their painful history, but undeniably real, undeniably powerful. "What do we do, Khalid?" she whispered, the question hanging in the silent air of the library, transcending their personal pain, binding them to a purpose far greater than their individual lives. A cosmic weight settled upon their shoulders. The gold had been merely a spark, igniting a far more significant, dangerous, and world-changing quest. Their forced marriage, born of deceit and desperation, was merely the first unwitting step in a destiny neither could have predicted, a destiny that would test their newfound love, their fragile trust, and their very understanding of the world.